I don't get it either, Bears fans, but somehow a 4-3 team has become the most whirlwindy, dramatic team that I could have envisioned, considering they have a winning record. You've got players calling out coaches. You've got coaches being squirrely with the media. You've got surprising changes to practice schedules, and now maybe a player's dad getting in on the action on social media. Look, half of it's rumor mill, the other half's untrue, I'm sure. But regardless, the Bears are playing the Arizona Cardinals with what feels like a little more at stake than usual. What's going to happen in the game? Where are the Bears probably going to win? Where are the Bears probably going to lose? My co-host and I will take you through everything to do about this game and more on a 1-hour show. We are dead set on it. 1 hour this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Bear With Us. I'm your host, Robert Schmitz, editor-in-chief of the Bears blog, right here alongside my co-host, Nick Whalen of Football Guys. And Nick, I know we can't waste any time, but I got to hit you with this one to start. I literally just saw, because we're recording on Halloween night. Happy spooky season, everybody. Hope you had a good one. And I just saw something that made me need to ask the coach in my life a very basic question. What is wrong with football players, and why can't they hang on to the football crossing the line of scrimmage? Malachi Corley has done near nothing this season. Finally gets an opportunity. The gates of heaven open up. Dude's about to score a bona fide regular season NFL touchdown. Nick, the short list of people that have done that is short. Like, most football players never score an NFL touchdown. How does this happen? How do things like Tyreek Stevenson taunting the fans on the field? Where do the details go? I'm completely serious.
No, I know. It bugs me. Well, it bugs me more because Malachi Corley is from Western Kentucky, which is my alma mater where I coach. So that one hurts more. But we saw it with Kyle Pitts last week. That one was just a touchdown. We've seen Deshaun Jackson do this, and it wasn't a touchdown. We saw with Chicago. I don't know if you remember the
How could I forget?
Blocked field goal return. Remember, and then stopped a yard short, and then Pittsburgh hit it. So to me, the having to look cool doing something or taunting your way in it should not be more important than scoring the touchdown. And to me as a coach, I would be irate. Like, on the list of things that matter more to me than anything, that would be like, outside of purposely injuring the other team, making all of your teammates look bad because you're selfish is up there.
It's a little ridiculous. And like you're saying, I know everybody's overcome with emotion. Like, I get it. You know what I mean? But it's funny because there are designated times to celebrate, for crying out loud.
Right.
Gronk never scored a touchdown that he didn't spike. I've seen Sauce Gardner drop the strapped every single chance he gets, like the strapped DB thing that they do.
Oh, yeah.
Caleb did the ice in his veins after throwing that touchdown to Keenan Allen. Guess what? All of these are after the play. So there is an element when I see guys, I mean, whether it is a personal foul after the play, which kind of folds into this, it just feels like, Nick, there are some people, forgive me, set me straight if I don't think this, or I'm about to say maybe the hot takiest thing I've ever said on the podcast. Like, this is true emotions, hot take, guy sitting in his chair on the internet. But coach, if I'm wrong, I want you to tell me. It feels like some of these guys care more about feeling cool in the game than they do about winning the game and feeling cool afterwards. Because I'm competitive enough to talk smack after I win and get called a front runner when I'm doing stuff.
Yep. Yeah. And it reminds me of like so many stories of like Rod Smith, who was undrafted free agent, and he reminded himself every day before practice that he was an undrafted free agent. And like that was in his mindset before everything, not I want to make sure that I'm cool or I'm paid, et cetera. And you see that to me, I think that's what drives success way more than anything else. It's not the style points.
Amon-Ra St. Brown knows the names of every receiver who was drafted before him. And then on the other hand, I know a Baylor story close to heart. Look, this is a rumor. I have no idea if it's true, so just strap in.
Ooh, is this Art Briles era?
This is a player from the Art Briles era.
Ooh.
Yeah. So this is a player named Ahmad Dixon. if memory serves.
Mm.
And so he's a safety, ended up going undrafted in part because of minor character concerns, though there's a chance that the Cowboys threw a draft pick at him at the end. But so, dude, he went to Baylor, grew up in Texas, is going to play for the Cowboys. All he's got to do is show up on Monday to sign his contract. Instead, gets hung over in Waco, doesn't show up. The Cowboys summarily cut him. Ends up having a stint actually on the Bears for a little bit. And I tell this story not because it's like some expose, but because this stuff just happens
Yeah.
across the league. Where, to your point, there are some guys that just seem locked in. Kudos to Darnell Mooney. He seemed locked in from as long as I've seen him in the NFL. He's been focused, right? And then you
Mhm.
get some other guys. Anthony Miller entered the league focused and seemed to lose that focus,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, Chase Claypool, same type of thing. All the talent, but the work ethic, was supposedly not there. Um, we are recording on Halloween night on Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
not on Wednesday. And I want you to know, Robert, me and my wife on Wednesday, she was expecting me to record, and I said, no, we're waiting till Thursday. And so we're going to the store, and I told her where you were.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay if I share where you were?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so Robert went to a Sabrina Carpenter concert, okay?
Heck yeah,
Now,
I did.
Robert, I we had a tweet exchange, right? Where you had some word, I don't know if it was caping or
It's
capping.
caping. Caping.
So I don't know all the things, okay? And I
Uh-huh.
know people like laugh because I'm almost 40, okay? But I don't
You
know.
coach high schoolers. How do you not know these
I
words?
don't they say things and I'm a coach. Like and anyway, so I don't know what that stuff is, but also I'm talking to her and I said, "Hey, who's Sabrina Carpenter?" Like, I've heard of her, but, like, I don't
Right.
know her. And she's like, "You know who she is?" I'm like, "Mm." So, how I want you to guess, Robert, how many songs she had to play in the car before it's one I'm like, "Hey, I think I've heard that before."
Did you say, oh, the one that you think
No,
you've
yeah, like,
heard?
how many times, how many different songs? She tried to play, like, the hits, how
Uh,
many songs did it go through before I was like, "Hey, I think I've heard that one."
I bet she probably had to go through like six.
It was 7, that's close. 7 songs, I'm like, I think I heard that one."
When you don't know, you don't know. And I mean, we are in an
Yeah.
age where like music is people listen to less new music, I feel like now than ever, especially when you get to I mean, I'm not your age, but dude, you get past a certain age where you're not in the club anymore and it's like, who's playing new music for you? Like
Mhm.
truly, who's playing new music for you?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, even the kids, they'll say this like the classics, you go back to the hip hop and the R&B of like, when I was in high school to just after, and that was like the good stuff. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's interesting. The other funny story before we get started, I know we're on a time frame, but I thought this was funny. So I have multiple jobs, right at Football Guys. I'm a life coach. We do this pod. I have my regular job. I'm busy. So it's Halloween and I got a bunch of dogs. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna get candy and I'm gonna leave it out. You know what I mean? And like whatever happens, happens. But like hopefully people are good. I went to check on it, like, okay, is it
Right.
full? Whatever. But like I'm writing articles and stuff. And and it was there was like 10 minutes left in like the time. I check and there's still some in there. Cool. So I go and check with like a minute left. And like one kid took it all, but one piece. And I put on Twitter, I was like, "Dear kid that took all of the candy in the bowl that left on the porch except for one piece. I would have respected you more if you took it all." You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of funny. So,
I love the coy nature of I'll just leave one.
yeah,
Like, you gotta be kidding me.
what'd be funny is if he trolled me back and he would just like leave one piece on my porch like randomly throughout the year.
That
What I
would
mean?
be
Like,
really funny.
like, hey, I'm that guy.
I'm that guy. I did
Yeah.
this to you.
Yeah. Do you guys do Halloween?
Well, so we do Halloween. We went to my parents' place. We walked around with my 2-year-old and we forgot to turn our lights off back at our
Mm.
house. So we just kept getting ring notifications the entire evening. And it was like, oh no, we're very spirited people, as I'm sure you could guess.
Yeah.
So there was this like, we let them down. We let down our
Man,
community.
kids were excited and then
Right? And you don't know if it's you or if you're getting frozen out, but nobody was
right,
at the house. Speaking
right.
of getting frozen out, how about that segue?
Woo.
Look, here's where I'm at, Nick. We've only got 50 minutes. I
Yep.
know you're going to take 20 minutes to read me through the stats of the Arizona
Oh, yeah,
Cardinals.
there's a lot of good stuff, man.
So where do you want to start? Because in my opinion, the funniest part about watching the game back is it's pretty much what you thought it was. The
Mhm.
entire offense just collapses on itself for 3 quarters. And I'll be honest, Nick, early, I thought it was the team let Caleb down. In the middle part, I thought that there were a couple downs where Caleb let the team down. But everybody took turns making mistakes. And I know you've seen it in basketball. I know you see it in baseball. When somebody's swinging and missing, suddenly everybody starts. When you
Mhm.
can't find the bottom of the net, suddenly nobody can. It's not that I'm trying to sit here and play like this or that. Because sometimes I feel like guys like you and me, we get accused of basically just backing the quarterback in all cases. But dude, the interior line all took turns getting smoked. Matt Pryor's worst game as a Bear.
Mhm.
Karan Amagdaji could not hold the edge to save his life. The only reason it wasn't a problem on more downs is because Caleb can step up fairly consistently, but that put Caleb in a headspace where he was frazzled, had no sense of internal timing, and played with no feel and no rhythm for pretty much the middle of the game. Rome can't seem to run a route straight. He can't adjust his route in space,
Mhm.
seemingly half the time. But dude, when they give Rome a one-on-one route, he's the best separator on the team. Like
Yeah.
it was such a I'm in such a love-hate relationship right now with Roma Dunze because I swear if he can just get the details cleaned up, he will be a star, Nick.
Mhm.
But the details are so off in some cases where I'm starting to I don't know if you're feeling this. You probably aren't, Nick. You're a pretty positive guy. Where I'm suddenly starting to go, okay, this is all the same thing as standing 2 feet outside the end zone line. Like, it's just silly mistakes that are
Well, I
costing
mean,
us due to what feels to me like pretty basic awareness that I don't normally see a receiver struggle with on this level. But
but he's a
he's a
rookie
rookie.
though.
He's a
That's the
rookie.
thing. The consistency's up and down with the rookie, and
Everybody's a rookie. They all get it. I'm
right,
glad Karan got involved at all. Karan Amagdaji did some sicko things in the run game
he
that
did.
were really good. You just
Mhm.
can't be a one-sided tackle.
Right.
Like you got to be able to block at least a little in the pass game. I
Mhm.
I pretty much gave my whole sermonization right there, to be
Mhm.
honest. Like, of course, there's more to say, but we got to be fast. The
Yeah.
weirdest part to me, and I'm going to hand you a whole chunk. You get the mic for a hot minute after this.
Sure. Yeah.
The weirdest part is that stuff like accountability questions and coaching within the media and the general tenor of the way the players seem to be acting after this game feels so dramatic. Like, I get it. The ending sucks, right? But
Mhm.
there are a lot of teams around the NFL that I've seen a bad break like this happens. The Ravens. Nobody's begging a question about whether or not John Harbaugh is going to get fired because Jameis Winston pops a pass down the seam and the Ravens lose out of absolutely nowhere. You could even argue that's a worse gaffe because that's a true defensive mistake as opposed to a 50-yard heave needing to bounce off a defender's hand and land in a receiver's hands. And I'm not like there's a piece to this, Nick, where I wonder if there's unsettled resentment from 2023 that never really went away and
Yeah,
got
that's
dug back up. And
right.
if
That's
that's the
yeah.
case, I don't think that is good long
Right.
term. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, let me stick with the game for a minute. Um, to me, I think you're right. It seems like Chicago has this disease, I'll call it, on offense, where it's one guy false starting, one guy has another penalty that puts us in a bad situation that's tough to convert on third down, and then they don't. And then one guy is not on the same page running a route, like for example, Roma Dunze running a slot fade, and then he inside releases it after Caleb throws the outside slot fade, which like you would always run that outside.
You'd
Or
always run that outside.
right, right. And like um, settling over the middle, like they're not on the same page, or Caleb doesn't see somebody. It felt like a lot of the time Caleb's first read wasn't there, and then he had to kind of make things work. But you see the parts where you're like, man, he does make it work, but also there were some balls where the accuracy wasn't there. Like it seems like they all can't connect at the same time. I'm not asking them to connect all the time. That's not realistic. But they should be connecting more of the time than they are. And so I don't know if that's coming off a bye week or what it is. I'll tell you what, man, DeAndre Swift has shushed the doubters, which is awesome. I wish they would have threw the ball to him. That didn't happen, which was odd. And Cole Kmet got kind of colded out there. Um, but I'm hoping, and again, this is the optimism, which as a coach, I'm really not optimistic. I'm a pretty truthful coach, but I'm hoping that Waldron will bounce back because he did for 3 weeks and it was really well. This was not a great game from him, but again, everyone has bad games. I feel like people aren't okay with that, and they put Flus in this box and transitioning to that part of it. Um, Flus is 9-6 in his last 15 games, 9-6, and
Right.
people are like, yeah, but he's won no road games, on Sunday during regular times. I mean, you can pull up whatever stat you want. They were rebuilding and gutted the team forever. I would say since they got Sweat has been since they've had a average talented team. And this year it's above average. Like it's been forever since they've had a talented enough team
Mm-hmm.
where you're like, well, they maybe should win some of these games. Before that, they were bad. So
Yes.
I think we have to be honest, right? Like that, because we're not like, oh man, they haven't made the Packers in forever. Yeah. Did you think they were going to do that in 2022 when I couldn't even name the DBs that were out there? Like they were supposed to
You're
lose those
lying. You
games,
could name the DBs, but you wouldn't
right?
have been able to if you weren't a Bears guy.
Jalen, I don't know if I could right now. I don't know if
It's
I could,
Jalen
but
Jones and Jalen Johnson.
was it?
Yeah. I mean, Jalen Johnson's been starting, so
Yeah, but
that's a
I'm trying to think of
given.
the other
And
one.
then it was Jalen Jones for almost the entire year.
Oh, was it? Oh, Kindle Vildor, probably.
Vildor played a little, but
Yeah.
Jones got action after Vildor got hurt, if memory serves.
So this is going to be hot takey, Robert. Okay,
Give it to me.
is everyone is up in arms because of what Flus has said in front of a mic, and what Waldron said in front of a mic, and they didn't say the right thing, and then they said the right thing, but it was too many days later. It doesn't matter. If I'm being honest, it just doesn't, because what matters is what the team thinks. And again, there is some negative things about that. So that part I think has more weight. But like, in your job, Robert, does it
Mhm.
matter whatever person on Facebook says about whatever they heard?
No,
It's about what you and your boss and your team and you guys have.
absolutely.
We don't know what happens in the meeting rooms. And this isn't me sticking up for Flus, y'all, but this is like, I think we're making it so much about us and media and fans and our feelings. Like, I know we're upset. You don't think they're upset? This is their career, their job. They
Right.
are upset. And if maybe they're defensive and they don't want to take blame, I think that can happen sometimes
I think
in
you
life.
can.
When something big happens and we have, shame and guilt about it. Yep, that could happen. I'm just saying, like, they're people, man. And we're like, oh, they didn't do it right away. And he's not the leader. Like, we just won 3 games in a row. Like, let's back off a little bit in their people.
I'm glad you're pointing this out because not only I think is it apt, but also it gives me a chance to push back on it just a little, right? Because like
Sure.
you're saying, I feel as if people will feel the pulse of something, Nick, and then they will attribute what the story is to the wrong story. Can I be honest with you? I don't actually care about Flus in the media. I don't really care what he says to the press, if you
Right.
follow.
Well, I mean,
I
it's
don't
coach speak either way, right?
I don't care what most coaches say to the press.
Right.
What bugs me is that Flus is 9-6 in his last 15 games, just doing the math there,
Hmm.
and the team is acting like the wins were the weird one. Like, we've got beat reporters that are really plugged into the team, like Wiederer and Biggs and Courtney Cronin, that are all voicing displeasure with the coaching staff. We've got the Ben Johnson story, feeling almost like it's been loaded for a hot minute, that of course drops 2 days after that kind of loss and
Convenient.
that kind of explosion. Like,
Mm.
Nick, I'm not trying to tell you that I know anything. I don't. But it's
No.
the same way that I talked to you a little while ago about the Nate Davis situation, where I'm like, the people whose voices matter are voicing things that are not great. And they're really almost out of alignment with reality. So do we misunderstand reality? You follow what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Where it's
No,
like,
for sure. But that's the same thing with DeAndre Swift, right? Everyone is like, he should get benched. It's the worst signing ever. But like,
but the media didn't say that, and the team didn't say that. Okay, so like Twitter people said that, but like the beat reporters weren't talking about DeAndre Swift should get benched. Suddenly you've got people like Courtney Cronin basically implying that this Arizona Cardinals games means more than, I mean, I think every NFL game is important. Don't get me wrong, Nick, but
Right, right.
this one, not every game is extra credit. According to you and my super optimistic, let's get to 6-3 take from August, this one really matters, but only to people like us. You know what I mean? That have like
It does feel
irrationally high
weird.
hopes for the team.
Yeah, it does feel weird because
They're
like
4-3. They're 4-3 for the first time in ages, dude. They've
right.
lost way more games. They don't have a winning season on record since 2018 in
Yep.
over 10 years. Like,
Mhm.
it's just a one winning record in
Yeah.
10 years. And people are acting like the season, I don't know.
Well,
I
and
think there's an
that's
element of
why,
melodrama.
but that's why, like, I just think it's so unrealistic right now. Like, I think Bears fans need to walk before we run. And again, I love Caleb, right? I think he's super talented. He's a rookie. And there's a lot of new going on, and you're 4-3 with one score losses. Like people act like we've lost three in a row. That's what I feel like everything is going on. And I think part of it is maybe we see the potential with the team, and it's like, wait, we should have won those games, which I think is a good sign. That doesn't mean it's all bad coaching. That's all I hear. I hear like Flus is a horrible coach. He's a moron. Like I've heard all of these terrible things, and I'm like, yo, like he's held teams to less than 21 or 20, less than 22 points, 13 straight games, and they're 9-6. Like I don't think that's like an incompetent coach. But people will
That's
point
not an
to
incompetent coach, Nick. But at the same time, I tend to doubt if it wasn't a Chicago. Let's say that it was a Vikings coach, right? I don't think you'd be saying quite the same things if a Vikings coach like Brian Flores allowed a team with 6 seconds, no timeouts, to score a must score touchdown from 65 yards away. Like I do get that element where you and I look at this team and we see we're comparing Matt Eberflus to Mark Trestman. We're comparing Matt Eberflus to John Fox. We're comparing Matt Eberflus to Matt Nagy. And against those measuring sticks, Flus is probably in the Nagy area code and he's better than Trestman. So it's
right.
easy for us to say, okay, this team's getting better. Like there are positives here. But from a game management perspective, Nick, everything that went wrong, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong without the coach attempting to intercede at all with like timeouts, slow the game down. There was no handprint on that late part of the game, and the results broke away from him. I purely say that to voice what I'm sure fans think of like, yeah, okay, they didn't deserve to win the game, but you did have an opportunity to win it, and it shouldn't have been this hard. So I get that element.
Right. So, okay, I have a few different things. One is, I think a lot of this is tied to people thought he shouldn't be here this year.
That
And so
too.
they're waiting for the first sign of any adversity. Yep, Ben Johnson, rumor comes out. This is why it should happen. It's the same thing of like when Fields had his first adversity of last year. People are like, yep, I told you we should have got rid of him. We should have drafted Bryce Young. Like that. I think it's like people had this just already locked and loaded to come out because it's not like we're bad this year. But in terms of the end of the game, I think there's a lot of different ways to go about it. And from a coach's perspective, I'm going to give you the whole other side of this. And again, I'm not saying Flus handled this perfectly, but there are other sides to this. Okay. So, for example, he should have used a timeout. I hear that, right? Do you use a timeout? Washington is more prepared. They're more rested to have those guys run all the way down the field. Jaden's more rested to run around and do what he wants. And if you think you're prepared enough, I mean, this is what happened with the Super Bowl with New England and Seattle. They could have called a timeout, New England, right? But they thought that Seattle was a little unorganized. And they're like, yep, we just want this to roll and see what happens because they stuffed Marshawn and then they threw the pick. Like sometimes you just want that to roll.
Oh,
Okay.
sure.
So I'm just saying that. I mean, if you have to think of that part of it from a coach. And
Of
then the other
course.
one is allowing the completion ahead of time. I get it. All right. But I said this because I was on the pod with Vicky and Dave yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Is do you remember the 15-1 Packers when Eli Manning beat them in Lambeau?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember the game.
Okay. All right. I mean, Hakeem Nicks went wild. He had a couple touchdowns, and Ahmad Bradshaw and Brandon Jacobs, like that team. They won the
Right.
Super Bowl that year.
Right.
Um, they had a play before the end of the half where the sidelines were lined with, I think there's at least 2 Packers on each sideline, and then they had some in end zone. They're waiting for the out, and it was like 7 seconds left, and the Giants threw the Hail Mary, and they didn't have enough guys down there. Hakeem Nicks caught the touchdown.
Did they
So
throw the Hail Mary from the 35?
you don't think he can throw it that far?
You think he can throw it 65 yards when he left it short from 50?
I mean, I'm not a super talented guy. I can throw the ball 60-ish.
I just don't. All I'm saying is, Nick,
I've thrown it that far.
completely hear where you're coming from. I feel like you're third guessing the second guessers, and I get where you're coming from. All I'm saying is that the coach has to be accountable for the way the game ended, which was a cataclysm.
No,
And
it sucks. It
it's
does suck. But
and in the last 15 games, to use your own interpretation, I
Yeah.
think you have to include the 16th. In the last 16, 17 games, there have been 4 cataclysm grade losses. And past certain point, people just go stir crazy saying, how do we keep losing these games?
Right.
And
Wait, can like, if you go through those quickly, did we lose Denver because of defense?
debatably, but I don't think so.
We didn't get a 4th down. We could have kicked the field goal and didn't do
Offense
it.
could have done so much more.
Cleveland, we'd have 4th and 1 where Justin tried to run, got tripped, and it didn't convert. Robert Tonyan dropped the pass.
Cleveland, absolutely. I think the offense earns that. The defense gave up net 3 points. If you count the second, I think when a defense takes the ball to the 1, count it as a score. Like if the offense can't get in, that's on them. Sorry.
Right.
But
Right.
So at that point, then the Bears would have netted 3 points. Like I do get it, Nick. I completely get where you're coming from. I love that the Bears are winning games at all. It's been a while. I'm completely serious. I also think that we can look at Flus with rose-colored glasses, where when people say silly things like, is Flus the 4th best coach in his own division? Or simple things like, can you win a Super Bowl with Matt Eberflus, though? You and I are going to kind of strain and say, I mean, if the stars align, yes. Or, hey, if Flus gets better at this, then yes. And does this make Ben Johnson or something like that a slam dunk, no doubt improvement? No, never does. But I get the unrest. And sometimes I feel like saying, well, you got to remember what's going on with the coach. What you're saying is right and fair and balanced. But I completely understand the people that are fuming.
Well, the grass is greener. And I'm not saying Flus is awesome, y'all. I am not doing that. And there's some people that say he's the 6th best coach in the division. Haha. I mean, I get it. We could always hope that the next guy is great and they'll finish games and whatever. I get that part of it. I'm just saying that we already made this decision. Last offseason, they decided to stay with him. And me and you talked about this, Robert, and it was a multi-year decision. It wasn't a 7-game decision. So going on Twitter and saying, we have to fire Flus because we're mad doesn't change anything. You're just frustrated. I get it. I would love the Bears to be 7-0. They're not. But it doesn't change anything. We already
100%.
made this bet. We already invested in this. This
Yes,
is
we did.
where we're going to be. And so if they struggle and they win 2 games the rest of the year, okay, now we have more data and that's what's going to happen. But
That's the
through
thing.
7 games, we're not there. We already like if you didn't want to renew the contract, this is your evidence for that. But we already renewed it.
I do think that's another thing to this, Nick, that is driving you crazy. And I know you, not just personally, but I know a lot of folks that are exactly like you, where you kind of want people to have a proper reaction. And the moment that people start getting petulant, you get defensive and want to argue with the emotion because of word choice, if that makes sense. Like, to speak to you, the folks that are saying fire Eberflus now, you're out of your mind. You are going to fire Eberflus if from here to the rest of the year he wins 3 games. Going to be honest with you. And then at that point, there will be a lot of losses. And then McCaskey's still not going to fire him in season with way too much data to suggest that is just never happening. And so if it's never going to happen, just take a breath and say words like, I'm not telling you how to fan, but if you don't want Nick to sound like this for 10 minutes of our 1-hour podcast, you got to use phrases like, Matt Eberflus should be fired if this stays or if this keeps up.
Sure.
If things like this continue to happen, you can't keep Matt Eberflus. I don't know how at the end of the season Matt Eberflus is going to be your best option. Those are three completely different statements than I know the one that Nick is arguing
There we go.
with.
Look at this. Look at this. This is like a session for us and fans on how we interact. And I'm with you. And I think Waldron needs to improve. Like I'm all about improvement, y'all.
Offense backslid
But
in a way that, to your point, Nick, the part about Waldron's offense that I think Shane's got to own. Like, if I was going to circle one part of his
Mhm,
offense, Nick, the first read is open shockingly rarely. And
I
the
know.
team has way too much receiving talent for the first read to be so rarely open. It gives the
Mm,
impression of either predictability or not thinking through who your receivers are. JT
mhm,
O'Sullivan uses the phrase "who's who in the zoo." And I think that there's an element of wide receiver dollars that drive some decisions. You're paying Keenan Allen $23 million. It's not to pay your wide receiver three. And yet, Nick, if we don't have the line to block some of these 3-second routes that Keenan's running, you can't run them. I mean, you
mhm.
can't run them.
And
And
the other
certainly not in
thing
the
too
third
that
quarter.
I think even maybe with that, but maybe an extension that I'm frustrated with the offense. Besides personnel usage, I think everyone's frustrated with some of that stuff in terms of like why is Mercedes loose in there so often when he's not playing well, is we start so slowly. And in terms of, I mean, I'll just map it out in terms of just from my lens of coaching. I mean, again, I've never been at this level, but you look at what other teams are doing package wise, on the field, on the hash, and you try to see what defensive looks they're giving you in down and distances, right? How often they're going to blitz, how often they're going to be in this shade, et cetera. And then you're trying to game plan, matchups and plays that are going to be advantageous, right? Plus EV. Like that's all you're doing constantly. It's a whole game of chess. And the beginning of the game, you're kind of like testing the water a little bit, like, hey, we're gonna have like these easy ones. We're gonna make sure those are the looks. But those looks right now are getting stopped, and
Yes.
the Bears can't get started. And so it really, I don't know if we're just being way too conservative to start with, or if the looks that we think we're going to get aren't even close. And we have to like re kind of do everything by the third, fourth, fifth series when I feel like maybe that's when things get going. That's the frustrating part for me.
Right. Like, to use a metaphor here, Nick, or I guess to make a direct comparison to another facet of life that mirrors sports. Nick, have you ever been in a fight before?
Uh,
It doesn't even, I'm going to actually, let me change this.
yes,
I don't
yes.
even care if you've been in a fight. Have you ever boxed, sparred, thrown
Yes.
fists, padding or not?
Mhm.
Did you fight scared?
I was, it's weird. I was kind of excited to be honest.
Well, that's the thing. For if you've never been in a situation like this, maybe you can apply it to literally anything. Driving is always my go-to. It's the only like high stress thing that most of us do that I think mirrors athletics. You can't drive scared either because
No.
if you get one lane to turn or if you get like one half car length to change lanes, you better take it. You aren't getting another.
Yeah.
And the
Well,
moment that you're
you have to be aggressive. There's an aggressiveness that has to be there, or you're not going to do well.
And unfortunately, I feel like after Waldron gets to 2nd and 8, that screen is so obvious and so scared that
Yeah,
defenses just mash it, dude. And
yeah.
if you right now, Caleb, look, you want to blame Eberflus? Go for it. You want to blame Caleb? Go for it. I don't care. I'm just going to tell you what's happening. When Caleb gets a muddy look on these screens, he's never going to throw that ball. And I don't necessarily think that's bad. Like people talk about the Keenan Allen bubble, where if Caleb just sticks it on Keenan Allen, it's wide open. If that corner comes off of DJ Moore,
It's a pick six.
unluckily, it is a pick six that Caleb's never going to throw that ball because he's got a coach living in his headset telling him, if you turn the ball over, I'm going to kill your. I can't say that.
Whoa,
Halloween. Happy
whoa,
spooky season.
whoa.
Flus feels very dramatic about these turnovers, dude. Like, I swear, Flus feels like one interception undoes two touchdowns sometimes. Like, the way he talks about it is very drastic. The point being, Nick, that when you've got when you got a quarterback that's just a little skittish if the picture gets muddy, and you've got a coordinator that's unwilling to call anything aggressive on downs where we're behind the chains, and you've got a running back that's inconsistent, you get an offense that has like the three horsemen of the 3-and-out apocalypse.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
well,
saying?
okay, so no, and I'm with you. So let me ask you this, because this is a similar picture that we had with our last quarterback and our last coordinator, right? It was like, if they're going to blitz, we're going to throw wide receiver screens. We're going to get real conservative so we don't mess up the game. I know obviously he's a rookie. Do you think that maybe it's like, hey, we have this really great defense, and if we just manage the game, we're going to be in every game, and until we figure everything out, we're going to make it more conservative? Like, do you think like that's the philosophy right now
I think
instead of
that's
like,
the fourth horseman, right? The fourth horseman is we are comfortable not scoring. Not scoring is okay so
right,
long as we don't turn it over.
right,
Whereas you see some of these other offenses we've watched throughout the years that are like, I don't give a darn if you turned it over.
right?
Go get the yards, come hell or high water. And it's a different emphasis. It leads to different outcomes. And I don't know. You be the judge of that, Bears fan.
How did you feel about Waldron on the 3-game win streak?
I mean, I thought, to be honest with you, that the Bears were so much better than their opponents that everybody talked about how great they thought Waldron was. I did not think he was doing anything that different, if I could be honest with you, Nick. They were just dummying people on screens. Like these screens that they called were in some cases the same screens. The defense actually was wise to it, and therefore Caleb dirted the ball in some cases. Other cases, Shane was completely overthinking things. Dude, he ran the Swift ahead of DJ Moore after DJ motions into the backfield twice. Like, what are we? It didn't
Yeah.
work either time. And how did you feel? Did you feel like Waldron was cooking?
I no, I don't feel like he was. I thought Waldron was getting much better the last 3 weeks in terms of using things and setting. I mean, he was setting things up. He had some good things
Sure.
going too.
When
Like
you
it
score
wasn't
points, you're
all.
always going to look good.
I mean, well, yeah, it's wins and it's bad teams, but like I'm just saying, like I felt like things made more sense. Um, I just think he had a bad game, and I'm not saying like I'm a Waldron backer, y'all. Like, I'm just saying, like, I want to see what the next couple of games are. Like, I want to
Well,
see if he bounces back a little bit. And, I mean, because sometimes you could have a whole game plan and they maybe changed up a lot. I saw this thing, Robert, and I quoted this on the other pod, but Washington's defense since week 4 is fourth in EPA. Their defense is doing a lot better
so
than
does the
people
Dan
because
Quinn,
we
man.
walked into it and thought they weren't good, right?
Yeah.
And I think they were. I don't know. I remember it's fourth in EPA. I can
It's
get it if you
solid.
wanted to, but like, so maybe I don't know. Maybe that was like a really good defense, and it's like, well, it's all Waldron, but that could have been part of it as well.
Could be. And I mean, I do want to make it clear, everybody, that on this podcast, Nick and I are both fairly similar thinkers. So generally, we try to just challenge the other. And so you get a little bit of, well, I think this, well, okay, what? And we explore it. Shane Wald, we are always way too fast to call an offensive coordinator incompetent. Not just Chicago, pretty much the league. Shane
Mhm.
Waldron, y'all, you are looking at a league standard offensive coordinator. This is why Matt LaFleur is special. This is why Kevin O'Connell is something. Like, you get what I mean, Nick? This is why Ben Johnson gets the credit he does, is because what Shane Waldron's doing and the offense's current output is pretty normal, especially when you consider a rookie quarterback. It's just not exceptional. You know what I mean, Nick?
No, and I'm with you. And LaFleur's cooking right now. It's sickening as a Bears fan. So here's the stats. So it says the Commanders' defense since week 4, fourth overall in EPA per play, first in per dropback EPA, and fifth in dropback success rate. So very good. And I know obviously the Bears not playing well last week was a part of that formula, but there's also 2 other games I think that's in that formula. So I just thought it was valid to talk about. So
Oh,
since we
yeah.
are limited, Robert, I'm going to jump ahead
I
to the
think you
game.
should.
Okay. Um, we need to talk about the injury report because I think that's going to be really big here. Um, Ryan Bates it has his window now, his 21-day window to come off the IR. He has turned in 2 limited practices. Crown Amagaji's calf apparently all is so bad he will not play on Sunday. That's where they're thinking already. Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker both are DNPs. Which did you think they would practice this week, Robert?
I thought they would. And I still have hopes for Brisker in particular. But I don't know. It's weird, isn't it, Nick? Where when I saw Gordon's hamstring injury live, I was like, that seems like a bad one. But
Yeah,
then you just talk yourself into, we're coming out of the bye. He'll be back because
yeah,
we're naturally optimistic, right?
I know.
Thinking clear-mindedly, I don't think we're seeing in Kyler Gordon for another 3 weeks.
I know. I hope not. I mean, again, hamstrings are different, but also both Brisker and Gordon, they're not quick healers, which is not great either.
Well, it sure doesn't help anything that a lot of dudes seem like they get concussed on massive hits where they were at least protecting themselves. I love Brisker for this. Brisker throws his body around so recklessly
Yep.
that he didn't protect himself at all. And
Mm-mm.
so Tommy Tremble goes lights out on the same play, and Brisker did not avoid a hit in that.
No,
So
no,
you kind of look at it, it reminds me of the Roshan concussion, unfortunately, where if you don't
it
protect
does
yourself at
actually.
all, dude, that is a major head injury. A
Yep.
lot of these 1 week concussions, that's the most minor grade concussion that you can see. And that's because the player still got concussed while protecting themselves.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I don't ever want to say, I just don't like talking about injury prone sometimes. But I will ask you this, Nick. This is a little tangential, but I do want to know. Okay, we're coming up on Brisker and Gordon's end of third year.
I knew
This
you
is
were
when you
coming to this.
start talking extension. Does this stuff get into the conversation?
100%. If it doesn't
Has to,
enter the
right?
conversation, then Poles isn't doing his job correctly because availability is so important.
And I swear you
And
get him for half the
if
year.
yep, yep. So it's so big. I don't personally. I don't think either of them are going to play this week. I think maybe Brisker comes back next week. But continuing with another guy
Hmm.
in the same conversation, Tevin Jenkins, who got hurt multiple times in that game,
Yep.
was limited on Wednesday, DNP Thursday. Now I will say this, y'all. Wednesday was like a walkthrough. So guys that were limited there and then didn't practice Thursday, they didn't really do a whole lot on
The
Wednesday.
cynic in
So
me thinks it's a little more than the walkthrough. Do you get what I'm
uh,
picking up?
I know, but I'm just saying.
It seemed like the cynic in me says that sounds like it was a come to Jesus, like it was a team meeting kind of moment.
I know,
Like,
but like also the old line's so beat up too. So and then other things, Sweat limited to Thursday.
dude,
Um,
defensive lineman and shins not doing well right now.
no, no.
I'm
So here's the thing we have to talk through before we get into what the Cardinals do, etc. What is the offensive line going to look like this week? Because
dude.
I mean, Pryor can play tackle. Left tackle. Amagaji's out. Braxton Jones likely out. He actually has better odds to play than Amagaji. Larry Borum has had 2 full practices. He could come off IR and play left tackle. You could put Matt Pryor over there. I joked and said Mercedes Lewis could go and play left tackle, but someone's got to play left tackle. Okay, then left guard depends on if Jenkins is going to go there. You could throw Doug Kramer over there, who finished the game there. You could put Pryor over there and Nate Davis at right guard. Um, Ryan Bates could fill one of those spots if he's back too. You could put him at center, take out Coleman Shelton. I mean, everything is very up in the air besides right tackle right now, and I don't like that.
If I was Larry Borum's agent, if there's any way, doesn't matter what percentage, if there's any way my guy can go, I'm telling him, bro, you got to get cleared. Like
Yep.
this, you've got to get in this game. The good news, there's more to that, but in the sake of efficiency, Nick, the good news is the Bears picked the best non-bye week possible to be struggling with this because Arizona's defensive line is garnering national attention for how poor they are rushing the passer. Now, I'm sure, and Bears fans, I am knocking on wood because I'm sure I just cursed the Bears, who have become a bit of an elixir game. The Washington D line was nothing to speak about either, and it sure didn't look like it did, Nick. You read out the worst defensive tackle in football, Johnny Newton, last week, and he went on to have himself a game
I
and a
know.
half.
I
So
know.
it's not like the Bears are good enough to beat bad units down on offensive line, but still much better to be facing this group than to be facing the Packers, the Vikings, the Lions, the
Mhm,
49ers, and the rest of the teams that they will be facing, frankly, pretty soon. So
mhm.
that's good. I would hope Nick, that time in the pocket. Look, right now, Bears fans, if you're one of the people out there that's wigging out about Caleb, I want you to draw a Venn diagram in your mind. And on the left side is all of Caleb's good games. And on the right side is all of Caleb's bad games. And Nick, right now, what is the defining factor between both of those? Like,
Pass
what is separating the good games from the bad games?
Pass protection.
Pass protection. That is as young quarterback as we have ever seen in this league. Protect young rookie, rookie look good. Don't protect young rookie, rookie look bad. I mean, I know. Look at CJ Stroud, fellas. And anybody, if you're a gal listening, there you go. CJ Stroud's dealing with a lot of the same interior protection issues. Whoa, he looks worse than last year.
He does.
It is kind of funny, Nick, watching. I think the cyclical nature of football kind of reminds you that, like, hey, we could keep trying to make this not a team sport. The whole reason it rules is because it's a team sport. And right now, I'll tell you what, Nick, if there is one other piece of this offensive line thing I want to say, it's that, like, this sucks for Ryan Poles because he clearly, I think, deprioritized the offensive line and said, we're going to get there. We're going to do what we can, but we got to do all the other things first. And dude, what a tough narrative to wear right now, because the offensive line has been worst case scenario all year, continues to be worst case scenario in weeks like this. And I mean, I get it. We just said that Shane, Caleb, receivers, everybody played a part in last week's game. You and I are also sick of saying that, conventionally speaking, the offensive line has wrecked every game they've lost.
Well, and Chris Morgan, like I mean, remember Cleveland game last year? They had like one starter that they were supposed to have, and they figured it out because they had one of the best O-line coaches. So if you want to talk about like coaching, we need an O-line coach that can figure it out.
They threw 2 picks, 1 pick six, one.
Right.
I hear you. To say they figured it out is anyways, you get it.
So here's some interesting stuff. So I hit up one of my buddies, Blake Allen Murphy, at Blake Murphy, if you guys want to follow him on Twitter. He's a Cardinals guy. And so we've been talking about the game back and forth. Here's direct quote from him. I don't know if he knows I'm going to use this, but whatever, I'm using it. He said, here's the thing. Our D-line is in worse, all caps shape than your O-line. We've lost 5 of our front 7 starters for the season, are terrible in sacks. And Darius Robinson, he got activated off IR yesterday. I'm not sure how much he'll play, but he says he's probably a week or 2 away post Chicago, or how rookies, will play. He said linebackers have been okay. But, Miami they had like 12 of 15 first downs last week, and half of those were on like 3rd and 9+. So if we look at the numbers, y'all, of what this defense is like, 30th in overall defense, 31st in points per drive, 32nd in the third down percentage, 29th in pressure percentage, 30th in blitz percentage, 30th in run defense, 28th in pass defense. I mean, woof.
You remember how last week, Nick, we talked about living in the world of where we could say 2 things at the same time? Every time I turn on Arizona's film, I love watching the way Jonathan Gannon coaches. I really do. I think his defense is so much fun. I think the way those guys move around is nuanced and creative. And Nick, in an age of offenses that are trying to take the baton and lead, this is a defense that is built to try to take that lead away from offenses. And they have no talent at any level. I mean, Gannon is working with nothing. It shows, because they don't have any corners that can play. They don't have any linebackers that can play. And their defensive line is so ghastly. They lost the only guy who could pressure the passer just recently, and he's out. I don't remember his name, but I'm sure you've got it.
Zaven Collins, they lose him?
Didn't they? Or I don't know if it was
I'll
Collins.
look
I thought his name started with a P. The
only guy that I like on that defense is Budda Baker, so he's still there. He's a solid safety.
He's there, but man, I feel like a safety is also largely a product of the defense you're playing with. I love safeties, man. I love safeties. It is hard to be a standout safety on a team that is poor, if that makes sense. You just get avoided. There's no reason to go at you. So I look at this Cardinals team. They got a long road ahead of them. And at least on defense, this is a game that the Bears should move the ball fairly successfully, and that puts all eyes on whether the Bears defense can rebound. And not to sound like a massive homer, dude, but one thing that I think really helps is that the Bears have a relatively fresh scouting report on this same unit. It is last year's Cardinals plus Marvin Harrison, which is no small thing, and yet, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you. Yeah. So if we look at offense, um, he had some really good things to say about them. It had some stats as well. Kyler's first in EPA under pressure this season.
Hmm.
I mean, they're top 5 in success rate and explosive rate. Like their offense is doing pretty well, y'all. 11th overall offense, 15th pass offense, 6th run offense, 12th in points per drive, third down percentage, they're 8th, and red zone percentage, they're 11th. So they're doing pretty well. And if you want to look at like what guys are doing well. Obviously, Kyler Murray and James Conner. Um, Amari DiMaccardo is a pretty good backup. He's 20th right now in PFF rankings for running back. Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, tight end, top 3
McBride
guy.
rules, dude.
Yep, yep. And then 2 guys in the O line are really good. And I'll name one that's like okay. Paris Johnson Jr. You guys probably remember that name. He's 12th overall tackle, left tackle for them. I'm gonna butcher this name. Hijalt Froholt is their center.
I
he's
can't
the
help you at
se-
all there.
he's the 7th overall center right now. And then a guy that we maybe could have signed was Evan Brown. Do you remember him from Seattle?
Yep. Is he playing great ball?
He's 33rd right now,
Hey,
but
that's
it's
pretty
okay.
good.
I mean, I'd take it. So again, they're cooking. I mean, they're gonna try to run the ball really well. That's what they're kind of the best at right now with James Conner and Kyler. So that's something to look for.
It's interesting, Nick. Not to turn this into a full NFL like ball cast, right? But you draw a circle around a lot of the best names in quarterbacking right now. What are you seeing? Like when you look at some of the most successful offenses, they are led by a quarterback that
Mobile.
he's a run threat. I was even
Mhm.
going to take it a step further, right? Like Caleb's mobile, but you're not scared of him picking up yardage on a keeper where you feel like he didn't earn it. Does that make sense? Like you're
Mhm.
okay with Caleb in the open field. But it is interesting. You look at Jaden Daniels, you look at Jamar or Lamar Jackson, you look at Kyler Murray, and you look at a couple of these other quarterbacks. There's not so many of them, so it's not an amazing like stat cast. But I'll throw Fields in here because Fields was 16th in EPA per play, despite or as a quarterback, despite the fact that the passing offense was really struggling. In the age of the shift towards 2 high safeties, Nick, the ability to command an extra defender in the
Yep.
box with your quarterback is loosening run games like crazy. The
Mhm.
good news is that the Bears did seem to corral Jaden Daniels and their run attack pretty well. So, at least in the grand scheme of things, I feel pretty good about this, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I also feel
See,
like the Bears are due a bounce back game, to be honest.
right.
After a game like last week, and if I sound like I'm stepping on you, it's purely because we're coming up on your 9:30 cutoff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and the other thing I would add in was, I know he's limited, but Montez Sweat has played, I would say, his best ball the last 2 games.
Hmm.
And because I don't know if he was banged up again. He's banged up a little bit now, but he looked more like Montez Sweat the last 2
Yes.
weeks. And if there's a game that you need him, it's a game against a team that runs the ball and has a quarterback that's mobile. So, and he did a good job, I thought, against Jaden Daniels. So we need him this week.
Have you watched much Cardinals?
I watched some.
Do you feel like there's a disconnect between the way that they use Marvin Harrison and the overall offensive cohesion?
I think that they're still trying to figure that out. I think sometimes people are mad when he's at X and they want him to move around a little bit more. It's been pretty up and down, but also I feel like that's going to be kind of it as he learns the NFL and as I mean, who are you going to guard? You going to let Michael Wilson open or Marvin Harrison Jr. open? So you're going to bracket that guy, too. So
You're
I
talking to a Michael Wilson stan, so
I
watch your
I
mouth.
don't hate Michael Wilson, but who would you guard? Who would you bracket?
Of course, you're bracketing Marvin, but
So
realistically, right now, you're probably bracketing neither and living with it if Marvin cooks you. Which, before anybody fights me on that, you nearly never bracket a rookie. You nearly never bracket anybody. You bracket like 8 people in the NFL.
can we okay, I have one last thing before before we get in our predictions and whatnot. Um, is Tyreek Stevenson.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
wondering if you're going to bring this up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You saw my post, did you?
No, I
So,
didn't, but it's just the vibe right now.
well, I mean, Tyreek obviously, the play, but also Tyreek has not been playing well, and I know PFF is up and down, but Tyreek is the worst graded DB in Chicago right now. He's actually the worst graded defender in Chicago right now. So I think besides the pointing the guy and getting the personal foul call, besides not paying attention and messing up, he had a bad game last week, but he's not
Hmm.
been playing well this year. And I know you're not a huge Terrell Smith guy, but I mean, you could put Jalen Jones in there too. Do you think? And there's also another one too. Hold on, let me pull it up. Where I had a chart where he's the literally like I think one of the worst corners in the NFL this year in terms of separation
That chart
prevented.
is written wrong. And by that, I mean, I've looked at it and it charts the separation with separation in the negative. And either it's got the wrong label on it and they forgot to invert it because it's DBs, or Tyreek is amazing in man coverage. If you read the label, I know the one you're talking about, and I agree because all the good corners are on the other side of the graph. So don't hear me not understanding the graph we're talking about. But when you look at it, it says separation allowed, and it says Tyreek Stevenson negative 34 or like negative 0.34 yards per play. So either the axis is wrong or you're shaking your head.
I think it's a different one. I mean, and they might have changed. This is a cornerback separation prevented and on ball grade.
Okay, different graph. You're right.
Okay, but it's PFF, so maybe it's the wrong data. But either way, like he's not playing well. So here's my thing, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
You're a Tyreek Stevenson stan.
Because I like physical corners that have good enough feet to play man coverage and are heady enough to hang in zone. And if you've got hips that aren't good enough to hang with that, I would press you up and live and die with what you can do in man. And that fits the way I would want to play defense.
But I'm
And that's
asking
really
you,
important.
does he deserve to be benched based on play, not based on what happened in the Hail Mary, not based on the personal foul, based on him on the field? Does he deserve to have Terrell Smith or Jalen Jones play over him right
So
now?
normally you have to be really bad to get benched if you're a second round pick. Like you also have to remember that I don't treat any player like they're binary, right? If it was
Right.
up to me, Keenan Allen would fall down the target order. I don't hate Keenan Allen. I like Roma Dunze.
Yeah.
And that's not how this works. It's never been how this works.
Mhm.
But, Nick, I think Flus is going to do it. Like, I think that Flus has his scapegoat. I think Flus has never been shy about using a scapegoat when he can. He's never not been that guy, right? Not to mention, they like Terrell Smith, and he just came off IR. So if he was going to play, now would be the time. I don't think Terrell Smith is very good because I don't think Terrell Smith can break with anybody out of zone coverage, and I don't think he's fast enough to play man any further than 10 yards down the field. And I think a game like Green Bay is a perfect example of what happens when you let Terrell Smith start an entire game for you. That's not going to stop Flus, though, because Flus likes the fact that Smith can stand in his 8-yard spot and step up and make a tackle when you throw the ball out on a screen. And PFF eats that up. I don't know how Smith grades so well because when I watch his tape, dude, I would attack him. I would assault him. And I have yet to see teams be flatly wrong for doing so, lest
What?
we forget.
Then not what they're doing with Stevenson. They're
Well,
attacking him.
sure, but I think that that's where then I turn around and
I
complain
mean,
about the way that they line
the,
Stevenson up because
right,
Steve,
but
like when I scouted Stevenson, the exact alignment that they've played Stevenson in is the one I wanted to avoid with him. Like
right, but I'm
this is
just
a
saying,
young,
Robert. Like,
I see a,
hold on.
go ahead.
But what we're seeing is, hey, Stevenson's 1-on-1. We're throwing at him. That's all the game plan was last week. It was roll right with Daniels if you can. You run some McLaurin 1-on-1 with Stevenson. We're going to attack him as much as we can. Like it was embarrassing.
Yeah. And I would tell you that I've watched this before, right? And when Vic Fangio worked with a similar, we are not there yet. We can't call Tyreek Stevenson the same as Prince Mukamura. But when Fangio worked with a similar corner, he just locked that side of the ball
Yeah.
every single play. He
Mhm.
said, "This guy can't play in zone. Why would I ask him
Yeah,
to?"
and Kyle Fuller was off. Yeah.
And Kyler Fuller played off.
Yep.
This is fun. I mean, it's not the same defense, but they were calling zone on every play. They just didn't make Prince do it because he couldn't do it. And Nick, in the only reps they've given Tyreek Stevenson in press man against Carolina, he got 2 pass deflections. He's not allowing space when he's able to play up. Not that it matters. I only care because to me, this feels like a talented player whose talent we are misusing. Tyreek
Maybe.
Stevenson does not pay me, right? But when I look at Terrell Smith, I see pretty standard meh depth DB.
Well, we've seen less of him, if we're gonna be fair.
We have.
And
What
he
I've
could have
seen of him
improved in the
feels
offseason.
vulnerable. Let's
Mhm.
like it wasn't long ago that in the second half, Terrell Smith was how Sam Howell ran his passing total up to 380 some odd yards in a
Mhm.
loss. So, like
Yeah.
there's something to the idea that I don't ever want to make it sound like I think Terrell absolutely sucks. It's more like I think that Terrell tops out as a corner that gives as much as he takes, if that makes sense.
Terrell's bigger and faster than
He
Stevenson.
does not play faster, if you ask me.
Well,
Like,
maybe not. I was surprised at how well he tested, but I'm just saying that's what the testing numbers say.
right. And I'm saying when a corner runs a dig against him, he gains 2 yards separation, sometimes
Mhm.
more, because
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like Smith can break with these guys, which,
I
in my opinion, a corner that can't break with you, like, that's every route. That's every route.
Well, but here's where I'm at, and I think I'm further along than you are because you're more of a Stevenson fan than I am. I am not opposed to taking a corner in round 1 right now if this season ended. I know everyone's like, it's all line, it's all D line." I get that part of it. I don't think that the other corner is settled enough, and I don't know that this level of play, no matter if this continues, he's given up. They're just picking on him. It's kind of a door, I think, all over again. You can say misused, whatever. It's not
Hey,
working. To
I
me, I
think,
you
go
you
ahead.
don't you don't think it's if someone's sitting there, you wouldn't take them?
I think around one corner is a complete and embarrassing waste. Absolutely.
Wow.
Like, in my opinion, I would way rather sign a free agent. You don't have to stick with Stevenson, I guess. But I think he's a second year player. I think DBs take a while. I think throwing the baby out with the bathwater in this case would be way too hasty. But beyond that, I think the data shows that gaining or that drafting relevant trench players after round 2-ish gets very difficult outside of interior offensive line where the chips have just never fallen for the Bears. So apparently they haven't pulled the trigger. I would tell you, Nick, that I think a defensive line, like it's not that it has to be defensive lineman. It's not that it has to be an offensive lineman. But if you drafted a corner, I would say, okay, so we just threw away a second round pick. Happy for you. It better work because you just spent 3 picks and paid a massive free agent on a position that you have a lot of bodies at. And I think you should play those bodies. If you and I like the DBs, and we generally do, then yeah, play Terrell Smith and cut Stevenson for all I care. But don't spend a round 1 there.
Wow. To me, like it's a premium position. It's quarterback, we don't need to. Receiver, corner, tackle, the end.
The league
I
does
mean,
not
or
seem to agree.
pass
Like,
rusher.
I
It's pretty
agree
tech.
that the league or the league's in a weird spot, Nick, where they tell you corner's a premium position, corner's a premium position, corner's a premium position.
Mhm.
And then a lot of the playoff teams trot out Kendall Vildor making the playoffs or rookie corners or guys that can't play half the time. And then they've got a bunch of stacked out D linemen and they've got solid linebackers because apparently that's where the NFL's winning right now. It's weird to me too because you would think that in a receiver arms race, you would need high priced DBs, but the Patriots are not winning because of Christian Gonzalez. And the Steelers are winning, but it's more because of TJ Watt than it is Joey Porter Jr., if you follow.
Well, yeah, but Philly spent a first on a corner, so did Detroit. Green Bay spent 2 first on corners.
Eh, all the banner defenses of the NFL this
Well,
season.
they're rookies. 2 of them are rookies. And
Totally.
Eric Stokes has got benched.
I'm not saying you can't draft a corner just so that we're on the same page. I'm saying the Bears have invested enough in DB draft wise and have such heavy needs in the trenches that if they went with a corner, I would say they were out of their minds. But that's just me.
Man, I just don't think it's settled. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm just saying to me, it's not a position that's off the board right now. All right. What is your prediction, Robert, for the game?
I feel like a massive homer. I mean, I'm going to fall back to earth, Bears fans. I promise. But I think that this is a relatively ho-hum 24-16 game. What about you, Nick?
Because I look back at what Arizona's done recently. I mean, to his first game back, they put up 27 points on him. They've allowed, I mean, the Chargers only had 15, but before that was 34, 23, 42. And I my prediction yesterday was 31-17. That's probably a little aggressive. So I think I'll go probably 27-17 Chicago.
I mean, I think that's super fair, right?
But what did you pick?
I said 24-16.
Okay. Yeah, close.
So my thought is that they allow some explosive plays, but where the Bears are really cooking, and I think they showed it in Washington, like Nick, explosive offenses, I really believe are going to get theirs against Chicago. But then you're going to get to the red area, and it just gets a lot harder. And
I,
so
I still
I
can't believe McLaurin didn't score.
I still can't either. But on the other ones, I completely can. I mean, Stevenson breaking up that pass from Zach Ertz. There's just not as much space. And
Mhm.
he's not there. His Ertz can sink a little more and get a little more space if you're not in the red zone, et cetera, et cetera. So I think Arizona scores on an early drive because the Bears tend to take a punch in early in the game. And
Yep.
then over the course of the rest of the game, bleeds 3 field goal drives, and that's it. On the other hand, I think that Bears fans come away from this game somehow mad because the offense sputtered and like streaked and whatever other adjective you want all the way into the end zone 3 times plus a field goal drive. This
Mhm.
this feels very, chances are they'll get the aid of a turnover just so that Bears fans can complain while the team wins. Like this feels like the kind of game. I'm completely serious, Nick. If I was even going to predict the narrative, this is the kind of game where the Bears are going to win so team thoroughly, but also unimpressively that Bears fans are going to complain it should have been a blowout because the defense will handle their business and the offense will look fine. And they walk out with the first Sunday road win and blah 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 blah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, the one thing that gives me a little bit of um optimism about this high powered, offense that Arizona has and trying to contain Kyler Murray is Darrell Taylor has just been awesome. Jacob Martin was awesome last week. And you still got Billings and Dexter. And Dexter's not on the injury report because I know he got dinged up a little bit last week. So I'm, hopeful that he is as close to 100% as players can be right now. And that's even besides Sweat. Like, if you can get this rotation in there when I think Chicago is going to be winning and a positive game script, which means Arizona has to throw when they're in those situations, he's trying to buy time. We're going to be annoying him. We're going to be in the way. And that's when those turnovers can happen. And like, oh man, Tremaine Edmonds is just 6'4" and he's in the way. And TJ Edwards, like, that's where I think some of that stuff, fun things can happen, even if Josh Blackwell, Elijah Hicks, those guys are still out there. So I think that the pass rush is going to be a factor in annoying Kyler enough that Chicago wins this game.
Plus, I always think it helps when you play somebody who's fairly similar to the guy that you just game planned for,
Yep.
and they're not the same, but Jaden Daniels and Kyler Murray are not totally different either. So,
Mm,
specifically when it comes to blitzes, I would expect, in fact, Nick, I would outright challenge Matt Eberflus. Rush lane integrity has to be better than it
yes.
was against Jaden Daniels when you're blitzing. When you gave up these rush lanes, you gave up runs. That will happen again for
Mhm.
both of the next 2 weeks because that's just how Drake May is winning right now. Like
Well, he had a concussion. He went out last week.
I'm assuming he's coming back for the Bears game. Just
Well,
to that's me making that assumption. But
well,
anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. Nick, you got anything you want to say before we get out of here?
I get one thing.
Give it to me.
So high school football, y'all. So the team I'm my title is senior analyst. We joke about it. But scouting, talking to players, coaching them up. I mean, I know all these kids I see in the hallways every day. We got a second round playoff game tomorrow. So when you hear this, it's probably, I don't know if you get out tonight, it'd probably be the day of, but you want to give some warm wishes out, we'll appreciate that one. We're excited. It's going to be a pretty good game.
Go do it. I mean, it's two upsets. It's the
It-
both. I love it. That's
yeah.
as football as it gets. Bears fans, hang in there. I've heard some people message me. I've seen some people message me things like, "I'm not excited to see the way this season plays out. I just don't like flus." Yo, win, lose, or tie, if you give up on this season, you don't get football back for another year. So strap in, cheer for the laundry, or don't. I don't care, but just enjoy it. We only get football so often. I think it's fun. And if Flus fails us, then there you go. But
Mhm.
I have so much more fun, Nick, cheering for a season like this, even with its ups and downs, than I do kind of hoping in my heart of hearts that they lose another game,
Right.
because that
Yes.
helps their draft stock,
Yes.
and they need the draft stock.
Yep. Yeah. And the symbol, y'all. I know, like, it's Halloween today, but let's just get a bear down comment chain going, because we need to bear down and kind of come together, y'all, as
Give
a
it the
community.
bear and the down emoji. That's the one
Yep.
I see all the time.
Yep.
Bear down. And I
Yep.
love it.
Hmm.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Hit us with a review if you haven't already. Ideally 5 stars, but whatever floats your boat. Like us, comment for the algorithm. We love it, y'all. Thank you so much. Bear down. Happy Halloween. Thanks so much for bearing with me. For bearing with us. That slip up's going in.